Namaskar. On behalf of Samskruti Foundation, I'm deeply honored to invite and have as our guest today Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai, who's an authority, an expert on Chanakya and his various works, his life, his relevance for us in India today. It's indeed an honor to have you, Dr. Pillai, with us. And I do believe that over the next hour or so, we will be able to delve deeper into your work, your fascination and passion for Chanakya, and how he is relevant, how Chanakya is significantly important for India as it is on the cusp of making that significant leap ahead. For the benefit of our viewers, may I go through the formality of introduction of Dr. Pillai. He holds a PhD from the University of Bombay, from the Department of Philosophy. He trains leaders and aspirants in various fields, including corporate, politics, academics, and military. He has done extensive research, as I just mentioned, on Kautilya's Arthashastra, which kind of makes him an authority on Chanakya Neeti and all aspects indeed of Chanakya. He's a renowned author. He's come up with over 20 books delving into various facets of Chanakya, his works, and its relevance to modern society. Under the guidance of Dr. Gangadharan Nair, the Dean of the Adi Shankara University, he's also studied, and he's got a PhD, as I said, in Arthashastra. He's done his master's in Sanskrit, besides being a certified management consultant from the International Institute of Management Consultants. It's once again a huge honor and pleasure to welcome you to our forum here. We are deeply honored that you've got some time to speak to us today.
It's a pleasure from my side because it's an honor to speak about Chanakya to such an elite audience and somebody like you who is also doing such wonderful work. Thank you so much for inviting me to this podcast.
Thank you. So Samskruti Foundation has been engaging in trying to unravel the rich glory, traditions and customs of the Indian ethos. And we are trying our best to make it as relevant as possible in the current scenario. We have been trying to unshackle and break off a lot of the colonial hangover, the invaded mindset that has been imbibed into us for centuries together. And I'm sure you understand that it is that much more difficult to overcome the difficulties, to overcome the negative impact of a lot of this brainwashing that has already happened. So we are in the process of trying to eliminate some of the unwanted weeds and ensure that good vegetation comes in its place. For starters, what does Chanakya mean to you? What does Chanakya and his life, what is the key essence or takeaway that the generation today will have to look forward to?
Thank you. This question is so profound because Chanakya can be looked at from two dimensions. The first is the person and the second is his philosophy. As a person, we know he lived in roughly 2400 years ago in the 4th century BC. He is known for defeating Alexander. He is known as a kingmaker of Chandragupta Maurya. He actually was the one who wrote the Arthashastra, Chanakya Neeti, etc., etc. But that's more the personality and the history part of it. But my study has been more in the philosophy of Chanakya. And that's very important for our generation as well. Because apart from being a historical character and a personality which shaped India, it's important to know that a lot of his thoughts are relevant even today. As one scholar put it very nicely, Chanakya's wisdom is not ancient, it is eternal. So his thoughts were useful in the past, his thoughts are useful today, and the principles that he spoke about will be useful in the future as well. So for me, Chanakya is that eternal wisdom that India needs to reawaken to.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to have this introduction on what Chanakya is. The very fact that you say that he's eternal and he's not for a particular time period, I think this is so relevant for the people. Because one of the accusations that is generally hurled at us is that there is a time warp and we tend to be stuck in the past. But then a lot of people generally do not realize that those who ignore the lessons of the past are doomed to repeat them in the future. So I think that is why knowing somebody as important, as wise, as noble as Chanakya and his works is so important. And that's where the contribution of people like you, Dr. Pillai, is so vital in the current context. You've been an author, you've written so many books on Chanakya itself, on Chanakya himself. If you could perhaps shed some light on giving us an overview of some of these books.
So thank you so much, because primarily I'm known as an author of Chanakya books. The first book that I wrote in 2010, a very popular book, Corporate Chanakya. But that was only the beginning. I wrote many books. In fact, the last count is 22. All the books have been bestsellers. The books include Chanakya's 7 Secrets of Leadership, Chanakya in You. I have written a children's series called as Chatur Chanakya. I have written books for guiding students called Chanakya in the Classroom. For those who are interested in the history and story part of it, Katha Chanakya. And my latest book is Chanakya's 100 Best Sutras. All of them runaway success thanks to the readers who love Chanakya and his wisdom. I'm also writing 4 more books on Chanakya. So maybe by this lifetime, a few more contribution of books before I go away.
That's amazing. You're being very gracious to say that the readers are accepting it. I think it's a testament to the philosophy of Chanakya, as you rightly said, and the way that you're able to articulate it to suit the current generation. I think that is what is more important. You were very right in saying that there are layers and layers to Chanakya, his philosophy and his works. And his significant treatise, the Arthashastra, itself is so humongous in nature, in its grasp and its width, its coverage, that it covers everything practically from statecraft to defense, to law and order, to administration, to governance, and all aspects, besides, of course, being a huge treatise on how the economy has to be handled. For starters, your thoughts on how some of the policies that have been articulated in the Arthashastra, how do you think they can be applied to address some of the problems or some of the issues that we've been facing in India?
So India, as you rightly pointed out, right now, at least till now, we have a leftover of the colonial mindset. Now, what is a colonial mindset? Is it an administrative issue? Is it an education issue that, we are still talking and learning in English? I think for me, it's a mindset that we could not revive. And that's the mindset of leadership. Because pre-independence era, if you look at it, I think we had one of the most, I would say, richest economies of the world. We were there in every part and every field of the society. We did everything right. And afterwards, we just became followers. So today when I go to some rural parts of India, why only rural? Even if I go to some major cities of India, everybody is looking at jobs. So a nation of entrepreneurs have become a nation of job seekers. So I think what really matters to me is that, if we were the richest part of the world once upon a time, was there a formula? Was there a prototype? Was there a format, a framework in which we operated? And I found that framework in the Arthashastra. And the good news is that you can actually reconstruct that framework and use it again. So I think my journey is not to appreciate Chanakya of the past, which you rightly pointed out. We have the danger of getting stuck in time. We may say, oh, Bharat Soni ki chidiya thi. For me, the word is thi. So if you were, why can't you be again? And maybe even better. Swami Vivekananda put it very nicely that, India's future is going to be more glorious than its past. And we are at the right point in time, the cusp, because the leadership of India is getting tested not only in industry or military or politics, but globally. So I think if we study Chanakya, what we get is the leadership mindset and of course a very important quality called strategic thinking. So I think we need to reinvent Chanakya, understand him from a leadership and strategic point of view, apart from what you said, governance, economics, military, etc.
A very valid point that you make that was there a prototype, was there some mechanism or a formula which ensured that India was such a developed and glorious nation? So sure, I'm sure that the jury would still be out on debating what that might be. Was it about skill development? Was it about focusing on our core competencies? But then, as you said, this is something which will emerge, and as we start unraveling his works, we will understand it better. we'll talk about the economic aspects, but let me also briefly delve upon the contribution of the Arthashastra in terms of strategy and defense and military might. How do we interpolate that in the current Indian context?
Before I get into that, I would recommend for those people who have not read the book, please read a book called The Wonder That Was India. It is a book written by a Western scholar called Al Basham.
Mhm.
It's a 50-year-old book, but gives a very different perspective. It doesn't glorify India, but still talks about the wonder of India. So it's a very balanced perspective, and of course there is a part 2 of the book also.
I see.
So why do I tell that? Because it talks about a very important part of India, not just the economic model, but the cultural part of it. We are speaking in the platform of Samskruti Foundation. So at Sanskritic level also we were actually having some different prototypes. The Indian ethos, the Indian culture, and let me tell you, Indian culture is not just limited to a spiritual culture. Of course, that's the very foundation. When you look at India today, the world comes to India because of its spirituality. It is said, that finally, if you are to have a last birth, you have to touch India directly or indirectly. So moksha ka dwar hai ye. Yet, why do we limit ourselves only to the spiritual part of India? Were we not materially rich? Did not we understand statecraft? Did not we understand industries like textile? We are the textile capital of the world. And Arthashastra talks about all these concepts also. So if you look at chapters in Arthashastra, you have 180 topics being dealt. And one of them is actually how we became a leader in the textile industry. One of the chapters of Arthashastra is how did we become the leaders of the shipping industry. So Sutadhyaksha, textile industry, Navadhyaksha or Naukadhyaksha, the boating industry or the shipping industry. Now think about it, the world, as we say, if you look at planet Earth, it is 2/3 water. So we were conquerors of the water world by not, killing people, but trade and commerce was very natural to us. And this is a document, the Arthashastra, where it is not just about glorification, it's not an idea, it is actually recorded history. So summarizing your question, it's so important to know that the strategic thinking existed across India in across sectors, and every individual also was a strategic thinker. Just to use a Sanskrit term here, the strategic thinking is being explained in the Arthashastra in the first chapter itself, called as Anvikshiki Sthapana. Sthapana means establishing. What? Anvikshiki. Anvikshiki means strategic thinking. So every leader has to be a strategic thinker, and strategic thinkers should become leaders.
I think that's wonderfully put. Yeah, you're very right. India and the Indian thought process itself has been such that it talks about the Chaturvida Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So it's perfectly possible to balance the material and the spiritual and yet have the goal of getting liberated. So it's a very complex phenomenon that only the Indian thought process has been able to evolve, and the West is probably still trying to grapple with it. And for their inability, they're trying to paint it in a slightly different manner, and perhaps reinventing some of the concepts that we had already got in the Indian context. Since you spoke about the Navy and the defense-related matters, how do you think the principles of the Arthashastra on, let's say, something as significant as statecraft, what lessons can the leaders of today derive in terms of administration and statecraft?
In fact, in the last question also you asked about defense. So statecraft, public policy, defense, they're all interrelated. Now let me start with the word statecraft. There's a lot of negativity around it. Because when you look at politics, instead of looking at it as a political science, today it is becoming more manipulative.
Yes.
It has become more like a power game. But I'll tell you one thing, power will be there in every field. There will be aspirants to get into power. But Chanakya speaks about what you said, the Purusharthas along with this. For example, Dharma and Yuddha, military science. Can we have Dharma Yuddha or Raja Dharma? In politics, can we have a leader who is dharmic? So the base of Arthashastra is actually Dharma Shastra. So the way Chanakya would look at it is that all these are interconnected. But a statecraft, and if you have a person in that particular field, if he's only manipulative, then it's a danger, because then corruption is going to be part of the society. Power game can get into very dirty level where, families can kill each other. I mean, that's not the culture that we are born in. I mean, we talk about, concept of good governance even in the Ramayana. Think about Ramayana's power play. Here is Ram who's been offered the power position, and he goes away and he has no problem giving it to his brother Ram. Sorry, Bharat. Or interestingly, the power game is that who's going to become the king, not you or me, but four of them either can be making the king. So the idea here is that, here with the dharma base, Chanakya talks about what is called as real politics. What do you mean by real politics? Please understand, we are dealing with human beings with different minds. So one position, many aspirants. So many of them use what is called manipulation to get into that power post. So if there are 30 aspirants on one post, 29 of them can be failures. But the question that is asked is, one is how to win the game. Second is what to do after winning the game. So many leaders know how to get elected. But after that what? The real game begins then.
Right.
So with Chanakya, statecraft is not just about getting the power. It's managing the power for what is called Praja Seva. Because if the governance is not people centric, then it's only about I, me, myself. So it is not leader centric, it is people centric with a leader who's got a dharmic or philosophical base. And even in the military, as you rightly pointed out, we require concepts like Samadhana, Danda, Veda. But the end of war is not power play, it's a happy society.
Very appropriate and incisive that you bring up the point of politics and Rajadharma. Over a period of time, and colloquially today, it's when somebody is being referred to as a political Chanakya or a corporate Chanakya, it also somewhere smacks of a little bit of sarcasm, or if somebody is a very scheming kind of a personality. How do you perceive this?
In fact, I've been asked this question many times. But the first impression about Chanakya is not a strategist,
Very
but a
cunning.
manipulator.
Exactly.
But that's been my journey to bring back Chanakya from a different perspective and saying that, okay, Chanakya is not what you think about, that, he's only the person who is scheming and doing something for himself. So first things first, depending on the opponent, you need to play the game. So as they say, one tool doesn't
Fit all.
one measure doesn't fit all. So if you have a good person in front of you, Sama, discuss with him. Dana, if that person is commercial minded, maybe I'll have to get my objective done through maybe commercial
Some
deal.
allurement.
Then becomes Samadhana, Bheda, divide and rule. Danda, sometimes war is the only option. But I don't look at war as the only option. You have to look at who is the person in front of you. So strategy is understanding the players of the game and the game before you play the game. But make sure you come out as the winner. That's not manipulation. Manipulation is what you do to win the game in spite of. It's just saying everything is fair in love and war. No. I have to win the war with the right way. But if you play the wrong way, I am ready as well.
Correct. So it's being attacking as well as being defensive, and the powerful interplay that you have between the two of them.
Absolutely.
As you rightly said, India is now at the cusp of emerging on as being a beacon for the whole world itself, as it kind of becomes a leader at various levels. What specific aspects of the Arthashastra do you think are very important, very significant for us to imbibe as India tends to become a global leader?
So first is the leadership as a concept. There are a lot of philosophies of leadership. And one of the prominent philosophies of Arthashastra is Praja Sukhe Sukham Rajyaha Prajanam Cha Hite Hitam. It's like a guiding principle. How should leaders think? In the Sukha of the Praja and also the Hita of the Praja. What is the difference between the two words Sukha and Hita? Sukha means making people happy. But everything that makes them happy may not be right for the people. Hita. Hita is what is right. For example, I think most of the houses we have this problem. When children are small, they cry, they don't want to go to school. Now if you tell, okay, don't go to school, they may be happy. But that may not be the right decision. Sometimes parents have to force them to go to school. Because it is not sukhakari, it is actually hitakari. So it's very important because the wisdom to know the difference.
Right.
When to punish is also a leadership quality. A lot of people think, so, okay, I'm a good leader, I'm a humble leader, that means I'm a soft leader, I'm a person who can be taken for granted. No. In fact, Chanakya talks about this. In fact, one of the, I would say, names of Arthashastra that is given by scholars is Danda Neeti. I mean, a leader has the power, but never misuse the power. But when required, use the power. So in the law and order system, you have to punish the criminal. Of course, you give him reforms, give him some chance to improve. All these things is there. But at the end of it, a punishment at the corporate level or a capital punishment may be required. I mean, this wisdom is something that Arthashastra talks about. Coming back to India. Now, India's position as a global leader is not just a political leadership position. I mean, that's one. I mean, we are hosting G20 and we have, our Prime Minister and a lot of other people doing their work. But can we think of being a leader in different spaces? Already, we are maybe a leader in the IT world. If you look at most of the countries that I have traveled, academically, we are actually leading in every country. Indian teachers are respected. Now, if you go back, industrialists, corporate world, I mean, most of the Indian multinationals have offices across the globe, so we're leaders there. Now, coming back, healthcare, or if you look at even the medical systems, most of the developed countries have Indians who are running their medical systems and hospitals. So for me, leadership is a very all-compassing word, including political leadership. Now, where does Arthashastra come in? Arthashastra is a book of training of a leader. In fact, there are 52 qualities of a leader given in Arthashastra. I don't want to take a full lecture, maybe there are other videos of mine. But the first quality and my favorite quality is called Vinaya. Vinaya is humility, and that's why in India, when we start any puja or any good activity, the first lord that we invoke is Ganesha, also known as Vinayaka. So Vinaya, remember a leader has to be invoked. Like in families when we go for weddings or we invite people for weddings, the first name is of the leader of that family, the eldest living member, maybe a grandparent. So without the, I would say, the blessings of a leader, you can't, do anything. That's our culture, that's our Sanskriti. But at the same time, it's important to know that, humility is also a quality of learning. If you are full, you will not learn. So leader has to be ever learning. And of course, the other quality of a leader which I like probably is ever learning, who keeps continuously learning from others and inspiring others to learn. Utsaha Vardaka. So as India is going to the world, we should not be with that, that ego that I am the best. I am the best, that's one confidence that we should have. But I will keep improving my best to become better. That's where Vinaya and, learning quality comes in.
Absolutely. So the other extreme, India is also grappling with issues such as poverty or inequalities in economic development, imbalances in the regions also within the country. On the one hand, you have so much of water, and yet there is drought elsewhere. There is a lot of greenery in some places, and yet there is famine in some other place. So there are innate inequalities also that you will find in India, and flowing from them are problems such as poverty, unemployment, and sometimes a sense of frustration, a sense of opposition to what's happening. Cynicism also sets in. So any thoughts flowing from Chanakya on grappling with this?
So I would not call this, I would say they are not different, but India is a country of inclusivity. In fact, we are so diverse that at the same point, we can have one place in India where we have a rainfall, at other point we have a desert. At one point, as you rightly pointed out, there will be poverty, and that's not accepted, of course. On the other part, we have the richest people in the world. Now, if you look at it from a global perspective, the richest countries also have poor people, and the poorest countries also have rich people. So I think, as somebody said very nicely about India, if there is any problem in the world anywhere, you will find that in India. But the difference is that for every problem of the world, you have an Indian solution. So if there is something happening in a South African country, somewhere in India it's happening. But the good part is that we are a thinking nation. We have respected teachers, saints, thinkers, philosophers. So we have the history of debating, discussing, samvad, vivad, and then finding out solutions. Now coming back, if you look at this one point that you made about poverty, is it our generation problem? Yes and no. Because people have been working, public policy makers on this for a long period of time. So if you look at from let's say 1947 till maybe 2024 today, have we improved on those parameters? Yes. So I think the middle class is going upwards. Of course, middle class will have its own other problems also. So I think we still are not a poverty-free country, But the number of rich people are also increasing. And I think in our generation, okay, definitely we'll solve this problem. So it's a continued problem which was attacked by the previous generation. We have to continue. But then I'm looking at a different perspective. All of us, at least in our generation, were born in a poor India. But most of us will die in a rich India. Now, can we look at problems of the rich? Chanakya has got a solution there. We are fortunate that we actually were born in a poor country and dying in a rich country. Imagine if it was reverse. Born in a rich country, dying in a poor country. My goodness, that has been very bad. Now coming back, Chanakya made India a rich country during that times, but he also understood richness is not a solution. I mean, it can definitely give you comforts to a great extent. You don't have to worry about the basics, roti, kapda, makan, as they say. All those things is fine. But you know what? There's a saying by Swami Chinmayananji. What is the problems of the rich? Comfortably miserable. So we have everything in place, but what about mental health problems? What about family issues? Is the society still happy? In fact, India is a great country. I remember a foreigner coming to India and telling me, how can you people be so happy in poverty? So if you look at some of the slums, they still celebrate birthdays. Maybe their resources are less. They still go to a temple. They have that spiritual question then. So I think Artha Shastra is a combination of Artha and Dharma.
Absolutely.
So I think for me, yes, all these, the diversified solutions that we have. Look at the inclusive word of woman empowerment. In fact, sometimes we wonder, in this country, Stree Shakti has been worshipped. So inclusivity from woman perspective is important. Today we have that getting to global standards. But can the woman be respected as a homemaker? I mean, it's her choice, right? So if she wants to be a scientist or an entrepreneur or a politician, most welcome. But I don't think we should ever feel guilty if you are a woman to be a full-time homemaker. I mean, look at a generation of young girls and women highly educated, but the guilt is two-sided. If you are working, you feel guilty you are not taking care of your children,
And vice versa.
and vice versa. If you are a homemaker, you feel I should have been a CEO of a multinational company. Now, these are issues also being spoken about. I'll give a specific answer. Inclusion means what? Inclusion means actually accepting every part of the society and helping them to grow with a common platform. For example, we have this concept called Divyang. I mean, he or she without any proper form, I mean, I would say, formal, abilities. These handicapped people who now we address as Divyang should have equal opportunity to get jobs, become entrepreneurs. That's one way we look at it. But the other point is that are you also giving them the equal rights to earn, in the way a normal person would do? For example, I think there's a huge discussion happening in the film fraternity. Typically, a man would get more for the same job than the woman. So today, the females, the actors, they say, why can't we get the same? Especially when it's a woman-led movie. And that's why, I love Hyderabad. The movie that has come from here, Bahubali. It, I think, made some of the biggest, box office collection, followed by RRR. Now, Bahubali, the name could be male, but actually it was controlled by Rajamata Shivgamini. Now, Chanakya actually tells that even for a queen, you have to pay the same amount of salary that a king would get. Now, that's an economic solution to inclusivity. Now, the queen in the Arthashastra you not feel is giving any great value addition, but she is equally important. So, can a homemaker get 50% of the income of the husband and not be questioned where she is spending it? I think that's inclusivity.
Absolutely.
Can the children have their say? Imagine, today we say, I have seen more than you. But inclusivity also means that you listen to the unheard, not only the marginalized in some corner of a country, but also the children at home. So Chanakya says you should listen to everybody's opinion and then take a decision. So it's a very broad concept of looking at the past problems, but also looking at future problems today for finding solutions today for the future problems.
You beautifully captured it, when you said that it's that much more difficult to be born in a rich country and die in a poor country. I think our colonial masters are probably realizing it pretty fast now. Also, the fact that you spoke about diversity and inclusion. In one of the opening remarks, we exchanged notes stating that the West is reinventing many of the things which have been which are a part of our life and our lifestyle. So diversity, equity, inclusion, gender diversity, and so on. I think these are being sprayed at us as being something new as a concept. But the fact of matter is that in India, we have always worshipped and respected women, and we have not believed in terms of tolerance or acceptance. We have actually coexisted with a sense of camaraderie, with a sense of being complementary to each other. Ours is a civilization which starts off by saying Karagre Vasate Lakshmi, Karamadhye Saraswati, and so on. Until very recently, you have had such stalwarts as, let's say, Ahalya Bai Holkar, whose contribution to the cultural and economic development of the nation is immense. And she is somebody who lived the lofty principles of trusteeship and fiduciary responsibility as we talk today, as principles of corporate governance. I think nearly 300 years ago, she ruled upholding the principles of fiduciary responsibility. You briefly touched upon Samadana, Bheda, Danda as being four aspects of running a society or an organization at a different level. Management principles also today talk about a reward and recognitions program, and there are inducements, there are allurements, there are punishments for recalcitrants and so on. So perhaps if you can shed a few more thoughts on how this pans out.
I remember I was in UK and I had gone to the London School of Economics. And one of the most popular courses there and also in the Ivy League universities in US is something called as political science, economics, and military. Everything has been spoken by Chanakya in one book. Now coming back, what is the work of the government? Chanakya is very clear, 3 points. First point is to give security to people, internally and externally. You cannot work in an unsafe environment. The first thing is that get your security right. Second is economic models. So give them some livelihood opportunities, make them financially rich. That's the work of the government. Third one is rewards and recognition. See, if you look at our country or most of the states of India, they have something which is called awards, like a Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan, and every state has got, like Maharashtra Bhushan is an award in Maharashtra, etc. Why is it? Because see, people keep working hard, and there are a lot of people who work in different fields, and the government has to recognize them. So it could be art, culture, teaching, literature, and this was formulated by Chanakya thousands of years ago. And not only they were given one award on a day and one ceremonial worship, they were invited to be policy makers. So let's look at a simple example, and this is a recent example, Sudha Murthy. We had an International Women's Day and a big announcement. She's already a Padma Award winner. But taking her to Rajya Sabha, where she has a better say than, I'm just an educationalist, I'm a philanthropist. She will turn the public policy of India. I mean, that's also a reward, that's also recognition. And maybe one of them, all these people may become maybe one of the leaders of the country. So if you go back, Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, he was a philosopher teacher recognized and he became, of course, the vice chancellor of BHU, Bharat Hindu University. But later on, he went on to become the president of India. And even today, we call him as a Raja Rishi. I mean, it's a common philosopher king. So I think if you look at all the models of governance, Chanakya made structured, he codified these, saying that get your security right. So Samadhana Danda Bheda is required internally and externally. So I think it's first starts with internal security. If there are criminals, try to reform them, whatever. But if the external enemies also, you need to look at Samdam, Bheda, Danda. In fact, there are three more. I'll not speak about it. That is called Upeksha, Maya and Indriya Jal. So that's warfare strategies beyond the four known. For knowing that, you can read my book, Chanakya and the Art of War. And that's a subject by itself. But why am I telling is that Chanakya understood internal and external problems. The second part is that economic, Artha Vyavastha, based on social needs. What can work for one country may not work for another country. We are trying to get the Western concept into India. Whatever is good, you should take. But you have to understand you are unique. Indian culture is unique. Therefore, our economic models should be best of both worlds. As Vivekananda put it, the solution for world problem is not East versus West, but East and West. But we need to understand what works for us. So the Arthashastra is a very Indian economic model. Chanakya is therefore called the father of Indian economics. And of course, rewards and recognition. Therefore, what has to be done is an all-inclusive way of looking at our society once again in a restructured yet futuristic format.
So when development of a nation happens, there is of course that element of masculinity or power, military strength and so on. which catapults it and places it in the forefront. But also there is also that modicum of softness or some of those subtler aspects of life, philosophy, culture. Any thoughts flowing from the Arthashastra on when a nation becomes strong externally, it is equally soft and malleable inside?
In fact, in a previous question you asked about masculine and femininity. In fact, India is the only country in the world where we have a transgender also included in the linguistics. So if you look at Sanskrit, we got three genders. Which culture and language of the world has it? Strilinga, Purushalinga and Napusakalinga. So we have included everything. Now coming back, if you look at how do you look at the soft power of India? See, India always has given feminine a very great power. That's why she's called Shakti. She is the first teacher. Matru Deva Bhava, then Pitru Deva Bhava, then Acharya Deva Bhava. Now, are these philosophical concepts? Yes and no, but they are also practical concepts. It happens in every family, even today. So I think most of the Indian families, as you said, it starts with, Saraswati, Lakshmi, Puja. But before that also, you should also look at, the kind of a culture that we have, the seven rivers of India, all feminine.
Exactly.
So Kaveri, Sindhu,
Narmada.
Yamuna, Ganga, Narmada. Feminine form we have given them. Now go to the other aspect of it. Does softness means lack of power? Not at all. Like today Bollywood or Tollywood is a power of our country. Masala, spices are power of a country. Now you don't use masala or spices in a military warfare like weapons. But as they said, armies can't march on an empty belly.
Absolutely.
Is food of India power? Of course. If you look at all the people across the world came to India for India's diversified food. Made, coffee, tea or, spices.
The most popular food dish in the UK is from India.
So is it soft power? Yes. What does Chanakya speak about soft power? You know, we should have a very subtle way of thinking to understand this power. No, I read a very interesting book on the government policies of US and the opening line was written by a female and said all the policies of the government written and created in the White House is nothing compared to the discussion that happens in the kitchen of a house in England. So think about it. So the soft power starts with the kitchen. So I would not call it gossips. Every village knows about every single person. That's power. Think about it, the policing system that we talk about today. It's actually a very British administrative model. Imagine if you go to a village, the first person knows the last person. That's the village model. And they had their own security system.
Intelligence and
Absolutely. So when in the evening everybody sits around, maybe gossiping, they exactly know every person, what they're doing, where they're gone. Now that's also soft power. Therefore, when you look at a Mukhya or the head of a village, he's very powerful not because he got a position. Position does help. But let me tell you the center of the village because everything comes to him. Information comes to him. People come to him. So I think the village model is also a temple model because the softer power is the Grama Devata.
exactly.
Now coming back, Chanakya built our economy around this soft power also. So what we traditionally follow, which many people think is anti-woman, actually the man should earn and the woman should spend it. As somebody put it very nicely. There was this couple who were married for more than 70 years. They're 90 plus. So somebody, what's your secret of success of so many years of marriage? It's like very simple. We had this division of labor within our house. What is that? You earn, I spend. And second part is more important. My money is my money and your money is also my money. Now it may look like a joke, but women have a very soft understanding of economics. Women are naturally the people who will go and shop. But remember one thing, it is not shopping for myself. It's also for the family. So give a grocery to a woman and she'll prepare a whole meal for the whole family. So yes, at one level, economically, we also have to look at psychologically. Money is power, but woman in money can be a bigger power.
That's right.
So a lot of aspects, again, Arthashastra talks about that from woman leadership also, Ahilya Holkar to so many other ladies. But this is something we should understand the left brain and the life brain. The other point and a very important point is that, men should understand women and also think like a woman. Because that softness, if you don't come in, you can become very egoistic. So that training was given by Chanakya to spend a lot of time to understand the thinking of the 50% of the society, the woman gender also.
Absolutely. You touched upon the temple being at the Grama Deva or Grama Deva Devi being at the center of the village, and it's even today quite relevant to understand that temples are the fulcrum of economic activity, and very few people realize its importance. Some thoughts on that?
I was discussing this before we started a podcast. Chanakya was the first person, at least that I have come across in my documents, who created what is called temple economy. And it is not a old concept because he understood that temples are a power center and a soft power center. Now in the Mahabharata also and even in the Arthashastra, there is a kind of a situation that a king, a leader or a government can go through. It's called emergency situations. COVID, we just saw, right? How do you fill the coffers during, apatakal? So, because everybody is without any economic activity and the government has to still run the machinery. Can you believe that temple was a solution? Because people when they go to temple, every section of society goes. So, but there is a, Dakshina box there. Now that's an economic model where maybe you put 1 rupee, okay, and you are not forced into it. You don't have to put. And a Yajman would come and say, "Oh, this puja is from my side. I'll give 1 lakh rupee." Initially, all this temple money was rotated back to the society. And so even today, all these temple trusts are working for the society. Now coming to temple economics, it is not only the coffers of the temple like Tirupati or Padmanabha Swami Kshetram in Trivandrum. It was also the ecosystem that goes around the temple.
Absolutely.
So if you look at today, the people who drive you to the temple, the car, the buses, the airlines, or you go back to the other part of it, the small shopkeepers, the hotels.
There's an entire ecosystem that is built.
Absolutely. But remember, it's a spiritual ecosystem where you come not for shopping, but to see that Mumbai Devi or Kolkata, Durga Mata, whatever. And it goes to other extent of not only temple economy, but also connected to festival economy. So all the festivals around this temple, most of the temples have once in a year what you call the Yatra,
Yatra.
Jatra. And I have seen in Rajasthan specifically, the Marwadi community, especially from Rajasthan or across the globe, once in a year they will come back and do that particular temple, that yatra and things like that. Imagine it's also a social economic system. People actually have marriages in temples. In fact, marriages apart, in most of the temples we have cultural shows. People who are singers, artists, dancers, they like to perform there. So it's a complete ecosystem where economics is also taken care. But first society and then economics, socio-economic model of Chanakya.
Before we conclude, it's hard to let go of Chanakya without talking about a couple of specific points. One is his whole concept of Matsya Nyaya, and the second of, you briefly touched upon it, on Dharma Yuddha. So how do these reconcile?
So you are a scholar yourself. Matsya plus Nyaya, 2 words. Matsya is fish, Nyaya. So what is the philosophy? The philosophy that let's say there's a pond and there's a small fish. The small fish will be eaten away by the big fish, and the big fish will be eaten by a bigger fish. Now this is what is called the law of the jungle, the survival of the fittest. Now
What Charles Darwin came up much later.
yeah. So what Chanakya says is that the small fish also has a right to live. Of course, the big fish has a chance to eat it, but it can't become power hungry. If you require to eat one fish, take it. I mean that's fine. But the 1,000 fish, you don't have to kill everybody. But because I can eat one fish and then I get a power game, I'll just go and kill when it is not need. So the law of the jungle, especially Matsya Nyaya, is a danger to the society, especially when there is no law and order. So that's why they said it becomes jungle Raj. Now jungle has its own system of governance, a natural system. But if that particular person is a human being, he starts collecting things which are not required, killing people which is not required. So what is the upaya or solution? Chanakya says that if you don't have the governance system, the Matsya Nyaya will take over. That's where Danda Niti comes in. Because not governed by a higher power, which is Dharma by itself, Raja Dharma itself, it will become a kind of a society of only criminals. And that's where ethic comes in. Secondly, the word of Dharma Yuddha. I think in our country, Dharma has been the foundation, and we have seen so many Yuddhas, be it Mahabharata to modern days. Yuddha happens, but the question that you have is that what kind of a Yuddha did you fight? Was it for your personal benefit, or was it for a larger benefit? And that's why Bhagavad Gita's foundation is so important before you study the Arthashastra.
Absolutely.
So it is, a very important moral dilemma that comes for every leader. It's called Dharma Sankat. What to do and what not to do is the question. So if you don't have a dharmic base, you will not be able to fight a yuddha like Arjuna trying to run away. So if you are having a dharma yuddha problem or a dharma sankat, please consult a good spiritual guru who will guide you to the right path and make you successful and victorious in the war as well.
Absolutely. So before we conclude, as India has been progressing and as we will certainly emerge as the Vishwaguru, any pitfalls, any shortcuts that it should be avoiding, and specifically for organizations such as Samskruti Foundation, with the sage counsel of people like you, what do you suggest, what do you advise should be the steps forward?
So I like the word Vishwaguru, not Vishwaneta. We don't want to be world leaders. We want to be world teachers. So this word, see leaders we already discussed, we will become leaders in different fields. I mean, that's a given, I'm not worried about it. But are you the right teachers? I have a doubt about that. Because people will listen to you. In fact, there's a saying that what a teacher can do in a classroom, the politicians can't do in the parliament. You can shape up a complete generation. So when India's time has come and we are on the world platform, what are you teaching them? What are you giving them? What's your philosophy? You should be humble because we are fortunate to see that a generation who is getting educated. I think engineering graduation is very normal in India. I mean, it's not an aspiration. In many countries, being a graduate is a big thing. I think in the next 20 years, we'll see every second person you meet is a PhD. But will it bring the scholarship, I would say, arrogance of, I am more educated than you? Sorry, that's not India. In fact, our saints and sages actually said, the real powerful person is the one who actually said tyagi. So, can you give up power after being the most powerful? And use power for better things. So as India has become powerful, let's not become into the power game, but use the power for a better game.
It's beautifully articulated. I think as you captured it, you encapsulated the summary. With greater knowledge comes greater responsibility, and with real knowledge and wisdom comes humility. There's that illustration in the Ramayana itself, where Hanuman, after going and wreaking havoc in Lanka, Ravana asks him, "Who are you?" And Hanuman, for all the greatness that he had achieved, he goes and says, "I am just a normal soldier who will probably be standing in the last row in Rama's army." So that's the level of humility, Vinaya, as you rightly said, that will be the hallmark of India as it emerges to be a Vishwaguru. Thank you so much, Dr. Pillai, for sharing your thoughts, your nuggets from the life and teachings of Chanakya, covering so many aspects of statecraft, defense, economy, and so on. We are deeply grateful to you. Thank you so very much for your thoughts. Thanks once again.
Thank you.